So we're going to talk about Christmas Eve services. And this is just an interesting dynamic because Amanda jumped ship for Christmas. I mean, spent Christmas Eve with her family in another state.
The one time I had boundaries.
Which I was shocked. The first time when you were like, nope, this is what I do, I was actually shocked that you didn't stay and drive in the middle of the night to your family.
Yeah. So Amanda pieces out for Christmas Eve. Melissa's trying to take Christmas Eve over, and we're going to talk about that. And Brandi is like the behind the scenes butterfly of Christmas Eve, putting out all the fires, making all the things happen. So this is going to be a fun episode.
Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
What's a place there shouldn't be abuse? Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims Jesus.
Well, it ruins your soul. If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of two women's journey through spiritual abuse and escaping from toxic church culture while finding hope in Christ.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
So December 2011, get ready to marry Froggy. And December 2012, I'm fully engaged in this Christmas Eve experience. What was Come As You Are doing for Christmas Eve before the building? Because I show up right after they build the building. So
yeah, so I have never participated in a Christmas Eve service at Come As You Are, ever. Which is really crazy, like you said, Brandi, because I'm there for everything all the time. Every time the door is open, I am there. And so this is wild that I am not a part of this, because this is when my family celebrates our Christmas together as a family. So I would drive to Wyoming and then we would drive back and we would go to Christmas Eve service at my mom's church. So I've never personally been there, but being a part of things in the office and being that I'm a supporter of everything, all ministries, all events, it was very centered around the nativity story. So it was either they put it on a dramatic play or someone did a reading and people would kind of act out on stage what the person was reading from scripture. It was all kind of things like that.
I heard that they would do a live nativity one year. They did a live nativity.
Yeah. So that was back, when we were still at the high school, because
yeah, that's the time I was wondering about.
Yeah. There was at the live nativity and there was this field, now there's a grocery store and a McDonald's there. But before that was built, it was just an empty, kind of lot in the middle of town. And so they did a live nativity there, but it was more meant to, it was a public display to invite people to Christmas Eve service is more what it was. The same thing is they would do Christmas caroling. So you'd load up on a flatbed trailer and they'd drive around and you'd sing Christmas carols.
And then this was just to get people to come to a church service on Christmas Eve.
Yes. Yeah. But the church service was very low key and it was meant to be a one and done, come to church, 30, 45 minutes. How I remember it, it was very much no one wants to spend 2 hours at Christmas at church.
Right.
And so let's come, hear the Christmas story, check your box, go home.
Okay. So I don't know who orchestrated or how this first production was orchestrated, but there was going to be, I guess I'd have to say it was a skit, but it was more of like not a full play and not quite a, in between a skit and a play. So maybe it was like a one act, right? More than a skit, less than a play. And Froggy and I volunteer and sign up to be actors in it. And we end up being the main characters. And so this would be...
You sign up to do something and you end up being the main character.
Yeah. Turns out Froggy and I could act. Shocking. And so I'm pretty sure that's like the first thing that I volunteered for where I wasn't in charge. Froggy and I are like, yeah, we want to act. So we jump into whoever was, this was, and I feel like it might've been a new thing, but it went along with like the mentality of skits of the church. Cause when I first started with the church, they had like a skit team. And anytime like there was an announcement for anything, the skit team would put together a skit to announce it. So if women's retreat was coming up, there would be a women's retreat skit. Or if like the fall campaign, whatever, like the skit team was like the commercial for the whatever the church wanted to announce. And that was going on when I first started. And I had just left a church where I was on the skit team. So of course I wanted to be on the skit team. But shortly after I show up, like the skit team dissolves because I think somebody moved, right? Like the person who was leading it. So there was nobody to lead it. So it's like this open opportunity with my theater background to kind of jump in to theater. And so Froggy and I, we act in this skit. And that's I'm pretty sure that's the first one that I participated in. And then, come October, my little radar starts, my timer, my internal clock starts going off. Ding, ding, ding. It's time to think about Christmas. Ding, ding, ding. It's actually kind of like you hit snooze. It's like in September, it starts going off and you hit snooze and you hit snooze. And by October, you're like, yes, we must start thinking about, like, you got to be ready to go by October to pull off a Christmas production. So,
well, and honestly, I think that's probably why we never had anything seriously, like a big production before you came, because Tom's MO is, Christmas, like we'll throw that to, like, it's not even December yet. Like we start thinking about Christmas Eve service like December 1st.
Right. And then the worship team is going to put together some songs. We're going to do some carols, and Pastor Tom is going to give a message. And that was it. Like, and
the message is, here's the nativity story. Jesus is the true gift of Christmas. He's the reason for the season. Go home. Merry Christmas.
And my understanding is now that there's this building and we have lighting and a stage, which really isn't production lighting in any way, shape, or form, but there's side doors. Right. Well, there's side doors and we have people that want to do theater. So this was like, to me, like this is just my mentality in going into Christmas Eve. Like, there was this live nativity, which was amazing. Everybody reminisces and romanticizes about this live nativity and how awesome it was. And everybody participated. And this is like the carrot, the proverbial carrot that is placed in front of me, is I have to compete with this live nativity that everybody participated in. The entire church participated in this live nativity, which obviously was a lie because Amanda went to Wyoming. But
well, and it wasn't like, and I mean, we're in Colorado in December, and it gets dark at like 4:30 at night at this time of year. And so you are in the dark, in the cold, in an empty lot in the middle of town with floodlights on you.
And there's not that many attendees at the church at this point. there.
No. And so it's like a dozen people standing there in biblical costumes, and like it's not even like a cool, like, because there is a church in town now that does like a live nativity, but they like bring in donkeys and stuff for it. Like, no, this is like we had someone dressed up in a donkey costume.
Right.
Like,
but
we
the
had-
way it was billed to me was that this was
Right.
like the most amazing high-tech production live nativity ever. And so I am
Yes.
continually competing with this. And the biggest thing is the participation. So
Yes.
like I can't barely get 12 people to participate in something, but everybody's supposed to be all in. And I mean, everybody was all in for the nativity, but honestly, the church could have been 35 people.
Well, and everyone was all in. Yeah, it was all of Tom's friends. That's why he thinks it was everyone, because all of his friends were there. All of the people that he would be like, oh, is this person there? The people who were important to Tom were there.
Right. So then it was
he's
everybody.
Like,
Yeah. And so this starts my ascent to take over Christmas Eve. And to be honest with you, I succeeded. So by the end of my stay at Come As You Are, I was the Christmas Eve planner, coordinator, lady in charge of Christmas Eve. And we went from acting in that play. And then I was also on the worship team. And so since Christmas Eve was really big that was like the Christmas Eve was the worship team's time to shine, and so I was now like slowly taking over Christmas Eve. I was planning the worship team songs. I even brought in people from another church and did sign language one year. Like, I mean, I was like pushing every boundary of like, what can I do? Get everybody on board. And the whole church was like, I had the backing of everybody because they wanted this all-in commitment for Christmas Eve.
Well, I'm sure listeners are sitting there going like, okay, so why would Tom be okay with this? Like, he is a control freak. It has to be his way. He is the end all be all. He is the leader. Why is Tom fine with this? Well, as we move forward in our story, you're going to see Christmas Eve and Good Friday are the bane of Tom's existence. He knows as a pastor, he should have these things. He should have these services because this is what is expected of him. But he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to come on Christmas Eve and have to be around other people because Christmas Eve is Charlotte's birthday. And he wants to have Christmas. When it comes down to it, he is a grumpy old man. He wants to sit on his couch and do nothing on Christmas. And he wants his family to come to him and bring him presents and have a good family time and eat Christmas dinner, and then everyone goes home and he can sit on his couch and be left alone. And that's for Easter. He knows Easter Sunday, people tried to help do an amazing Easter Sunday service, and Tom would jump down their throat because Easter Sunday is the Super Bowl of all
you don't do your productions, you don't do all of that. It's not the happy birthday party. It's the Super Bowl. It's the Super Bowl of the Christian church calendar. Like,
yep. But Good Friday service, Tom could give two craps.
And also it's because we are not about smoke and mirrors and light shows and all these things. We are all about Jesus. So he wants to do a Sunday sermon if he has to do it. He's not going to do anything because we sell pick up your cross daily and follow Jesus. During Jesus's time, they're not doing plays and stuff. They're out discipling. So he falls back on that to hide of really just wanting to sit at home, and he's tired. We're all tired. But also what I think is very funny during this time is I have no idea, Melissa, that you're in charge of anything. And I end up picking up the pieces that you have no idea that no one's in charge of. And I don't know you're in charge of any of this until right now.
So this is what's so funny. No, this is what's so funny. It's like, and we'll talk about this stuff. So you show up so I've got like 2 years of like trying to take over Christmas Eve. I've definitely got my foot in the door. I want to say it's probably after you showed up that I finally got to be vocal. Like there's just certain things I was allowed to do. And
Right.
Christmas Eve and children's worship, I ended up having free reign. It's like, this is what keeps Melissa happy. She works the rest of the time. We don't have to deal with her. But if we give her this outlet, it just goes better because she has an idea of how it's supposed to look and she can make it happen. And so I feel like when you start talking about this and the pieces that you're picking up, as you start telling these, I'm going to kind of tell, because I've heard some of these. I know that I am demanding a lot of things and things happen magically in my world. And
Right.
we're going to soon find out that you are the little elf and I am the shoemaker.
Well, and now it makes sense to me, which it didn't dawn on me, because I always, down the road, I'm called in at a certain point and I'm told I am going to help with the Christmas play.
Right.
And I do not like the Christmas play. I am very vocal that I'm not participating in it. I am not an actress. I have nothing to do, like, this is not my cup of tea. I don't want any part of it. But now it makes sense because we have been working together doing Christmas all along, but we didn't know we were working together.
Right. So talk about the time from the time you show up, because I just talked about like when I showed up and I started participating in Christmas Eve to, we're going to get to this Christmas play that you mentioned. So what is your experience coming in and Christmas Eve services specifically before the play? And then we'll talk about the play.
Okay. So my first one is 2014. And I don't show up early. I know Amanda's not going to be there. And also, the woman who leads children's, she's not going to be there either. But nobody's concerned about this because the attendance has been fine in the past to where everyone can fit in the sanctuary. The kids sit with their parents. No children's ministries offered because everyone has a chair. So it hasn't been a problem.
Well, up until this point, we don't offer children's childcare or a children's service for anything outside of a Sunday morning. Like, period, end of story.
Still don't. During this part, we're never going to offer this. So what happens in 2014 is we've had agency D3. So some of the people have fallen off from attending, but we're still their church. Their kids had an amazing experience. So all of these families come, and then they bring grandparents, whatever. So nobody has thought about parking, where these people are going to sit. And so I don't know what happens with parking. I'm assuming the guys that helped on Sunday mornings figure it out. I know, like, they park in the neighborhood behind, they park across the street. People start coming in, all the seats are full. There's standing room only. There's kids that are not in chairs, so they're like crawling around, whatever. And
and this is like one of the bigger plays now. Like, this is probably the biggest play. Like Froggy and I got married, and then we acted in this little skit that was a little, and then all of a sudden now it's like, that was cool, let's do it again, only a little bigger. And that was cool, let's do it again. And now this is like a much bigger production of as long as we're telling the redemption gospel nativity story, then so now we've attracted all these families, and it's a show. We're putting on a show for Christmas Eve at this point.
Right. So at this point, I just scramble. I grab a bunch of coloring pages, crayons, and I just start handing them out in the aisle. So it's fine. It works for this year. And so the next year, we know it's going to be big. We know there's going to be a lot of people, but we're still not going to offer childcare.
Well, do you remember that first year? I don't go, and you're like, what do you mean you don't go? And I said, I never go. Like, this is my one time with my family. I never go. And you call me on Christmas Day, and you are like, every damn person in town was there.
Yes,
I
like
forgot
this?
About that. Is it like this? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so. And you're like, every freaking person in town was there.
And I'm the only one there that is like in charge. And a lot, it's my personality. I am going to be in charge. It's overwhelming. It's crazy. But it's also a ton of dopamine. So I love this.
Only plan and prepare for things once they've happened. We don't have any foresight to plan and prepare for things in reality. And I know from my perspective, like I compartmentalize things. Like I am putting on a small play. So if it has to do anything with putting on a play, I know how to do that. And that's what I'm doing. But if I have to, but anything else, like the childcare or parking or anything like that, I'm not concerned about that. I'm going to have my actors there early. I want to make sure they have food. I've mentioned it to somebody. Somebody told me it would be taken care of, not to worry about it. And I'm going to go on with directing. Like that's my world.
Right? Well, and like, let's remind everyone, Melissa has ADHD. Brandi has ADHD. So for Melissa, this is her hyper focus. She does things amazingly, wonderfully, perfectly. Like she freaking kills it. But there's blind spots to her hyper focus. So being a functional, healthy church, someone would have been like, oh, what do we think about all of these things? And so we've kind of joked, like, you've called me the ADHD whisperer because in not Christmas Eve service, but in other things, I would be like, oh, what about parking? What do we think about this? What do we think about this? And I would be the one to bring those things up. And that would feed into the Amanda's controlling because it wasn't that I was saying, hey, has anyone thought of this? You should do it my way. I was saying, hey, I don't think anyone's thought of this.
Right.
Right. And we don't bring any of this up. So now we're another year. It's bigger. We don't discuss parking. We don't discuss how we're going to fit all these people that we couldn't fit last year. Because we've had another big VBS. We are like still growing at this time. They're building more houses. There's a lot of young families.
Yeah, we unstack all the chairs and we add another row in the back. That's how this is going to go.
Exactly. So once again, it's crazy. But now I'm a year in because last time I'm only 6 months in. So now I am visible in the church. Everyone knows who I am. I will take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. So my solution is I'm going to open the nursery. We're not going to worry about safety, taking names, bottles, diapers, any of that. I'm just going to open it as soon as it starts getting crazy in the sanctuary. The sound booth will let me know via signal, and I'll start gathering up people's kids. And so, but first it's the servants' kids. And so usually like a grandma would go in with me. But then I would get the sound booth pointing at people like the baby's crying or something. So then I just go down to where that baby is and kind of put my arms out and they just hand me the baby and they take the baby. And I mean, we are packed. And it's not a Sunday where like you know who I am. And at this point, you only know me from women's ministry and children's ministry. So if you haven't participated in those things, you don't know who I am because I'm in the back on Sundays. And so this goes on, my part in this goes on till about, what happens in 2016?
I had done this summer worship band, and we had sign language some of our songs. And then there's a member of the church whose mom did sign language. And she was like, oh, if you're interested in doing sign language, I belong to this sign language group at this other church. And so then when it got to Christmas time, I was like, let's do these certain songs. Like, this is the pivotal moment for me of where I went from being one of the people in charge and like cohorting with the other worship team members and Pastor Tom to where I just kind of took over, because this is the one where I was like, we have to do these songs because these are the songs that can be signed. And then I took those songs to the signing group and I was coordinating between the two. And so I had people, and then of course they invited their people to come see them sign at a Christmas Eve service. And so this one went like through the roof.
That makes sense, because this is when I am now getting there a little bit after the worship team, because I need to be there now because we got a lot of people. If people bring their kids, I need to do something with them, because like Tom doesn't even like me in the sanctuary during any type of worship practice at all. So he doesn't want any distraction in there. And so I do go to Amanda before this and I say, this is going to be out of control. Like, we have to have name tags. We have to have some kind of sign in, sign out. Like, I'll just take the 2 and unders, and like the worship kids can come in because they're going to be here all day. Because this is a major, we're at the church for a long time. And this is where it comes in. If we can get people to make food, we have some kind of potluck type of thing, or we end up with cold pizza. Because I'm not going to think about the food, because I'm only concerned about what I'm going to do with the kids. And so this is one of the really big productions, and this is when we don't advertise that there'll be childcare, but when you come in, I'm now behind the preschool desk. And if you catch that, you can leave your kid with me, but we're not flagging you down because we don't have the manpower.
Right.
Well,
right.
So I want to backtrack and clarify really quick. So we are advertising this to the public that this is a family service. Come and sit as a family. There is no childcare because this is a family service. But we are quickly realizing that there is more and more and more people being involved in this, and it's Christmas Eve. We have to do something with their kids. And so, Brandi, are you asked by Charlotte? Are you asked by Tom? Or is it just something that you see a need, and so you're just like, you know what, screw it, no one's doing this, I'll do it?
So each year, because this is about year 3 for me, so each year I go to the church a little bit earlier before the service starts, because there's so many fires to put out. And so by this point, I know I need to get there at least 3 to 4 hours before the actual service is going to start. And because I know Tom now, and I know when he's getting annoyed with the practice, and he doesn't want the worship team kids running up and down the sanctuary aisles. But it's December in Colorado. It's cold out, but luckily we do have a gym. So I do take it upon myself to entertain the kids before. And I'm just kind of there because, 1, it's chaos, I thrive. 2, it's a great dopamine hit. And I want to be a great leader, and great leaders serve wherever it's needed. Because it's always held over me that I am not a leader. And it's always implied that I need to serve more, even though I can't figure out how I could possibly serve more when that's all I do. So I do this on my own. And at the time, I would have said, I am doing this for Jesus, only for Jesus, for the worship team families. And so these kids can do something besides sit there and be bored. But in reality, I become addicted to this adrenaline of chaos. And I get my best dopamine fixes on these nights.
So you said something, you said you can tell Tom is annoyed. And that's something that I want people to really understand, because Tom, as controlling and as just like flat out abusive as he is to those in the inner circle, in a public setting like this, he is not going to stop worship practice and be like, will you stop your kids from running around? Like, he's not going to do that. And so when you spend enough time around him and you hear the things he says, because he would not stop it in the moment, but he would come into the office and he would complain about it in the office. And so when you start to pick up on those things, you, like you said, Brandi, you jump in because you want to be helpful. You're jumping in to solve a problem. And when you start doing that, are you solving a problem? Yes. But also, there's people who see that and for some reason it annoys them. And so now you are a problem because you're trying to solve a problem.
Right. And he was very strategic about who he would tell things to. Like,
oh, yeah.
Know that the way you needed to behave, and that you needed to be the one. Like, he would say things in a way where he wouldn't tell you what to do, but he would say it in a way where you knew it, you understood the assignment. Like, you were being told these things were a problem, but in a way that you would take action to do it.
And then if I couldn't get all the kids to go with me, that would also be used against me of, why aren't they wanting to go with you? But luckily, during this point in time, all the worship team kids want to come with me. Right. And most of that is because they're all very young and it's going to be a great time.
Yeah. Everybody has a great time.
It doesn't become a problem till they get a little bit older and they're like, we don't want to go do kindergarten games with you. We're in middle school. And that's the thing is, during this time, it's all kids need to come with me. Even the high schoolers need to come with me because he doesn't want to see them sitting in there either before the service starts. And so that becomes real fun when they get older.
Right.
And they don't want to be helpers, because it's fun to be a helper when you're in 5th and 6th grade. Everyone wants to help.
Well, and then
but
we
transitioned at an early age.
Yeah, and then we transitioned to where, like, we don't have enough, like, adult participation, and adults don't want to get up on stage and, like, do things. So we have all these young, I have a handful of theater kids, myself. So, what are we going to do with them? Well, let's have a show with kids in it, and let's include the kids. And then the next year, after that, we don't do a whole lot because I went back to work full time. And I went like full time plus a few hours. But I was still fighting that I want to be the stay-at-home mom and I want to be in church leadership and I want to be doing all this stuff all the time at the church, but I also have to be this 50-hour-a-week employee. And so, figuring out, it's like demanding at work that I have to have time to do this because this is what I do. Like, I can't work on Sunday mornings because I go to church because I'm on the worship team, and I can't work on Tuesday nights or Wednesday night or whatever day worship practice is because it changed.
Tuesday.
It was for a long time, but before that it was like Fridays, and then it was Thursdays, and then it wasn't, and then it was this, and it's like, So I had to constantly like rearrange my work schedule to make sure that I could go to these things. But like Christmas Eve service became one of those things that like, no, I will do amongst trying to work in a restaurant, and the busiest time of year is Christmas. And then also schedule play practices and things like that around my work schedule. And so like the next year, it didn't do as big of it. Like it went big, I would say now a medium
and our
production.
numbers.
And then it wasn't so big. And I didn't really, I mean, I was participated definitely, and I was leading stuff, but not to as high of a level as what you would think coming off of such a big production.
Well, and our VBS isn't big this year.
Yeah.
So VBS wears off because it was great for like 3 years, but now everyone in town is doing one, and a lot of times we're doing the same one because we don't talk to each other beforehand, but we do get smart and do that later on. So we're doing the same one, and honestly, we've burned out a lot of these families and kids, and now people will ghost us because we serve so much Kool-Aid and give them so much guilt that they don't want to participate. So our numbers do go down, and it's not that hard of a year.
And remember, all of these churches are denominational churches. So like we aren't the first ones to do VBS, but we do it on such a grand scale with Agency D3. We see this huge amount of people. We have churches calling us and being like, what did you do? How did you get 300 kids? And we're like, I don't know, but we can't tell them we don't know. It was just a fluke. We have to make it some big spiritual, we pray better than you or some crap like that.
It was the size of the building.
Yeah. And
because
so
if you just move there and take your kids to the big church.
Yeah. So the other churches are seeing that we did this on this big scale. They're not realizing it's a fluke because we have a brand new big building and all these people are coming in and they were younger. We talked about this in our last episode of, they're from a non-denominational church. So they're looking for a non-denominational church. So they're not understanding that dynamic. We don't understand that dynamic. This feeds into the we're chosen by God crap. And so what we do the next year, these denominational churches are trying that too, because it worked for Come As You Are. Maybe it'll work for us.
Right. Well, and behind the scenes, this is like 2017, I believe. We're seeing the first cracks in the newest division between the young families that came in 2012 to 2014.
Yeah.
Division is starting to happen. So this Christmas, people aren't participating. People are upset about various things. So there is not this excitement anymore, because now people really know what it means to serve, what the expectations are, and certain people are allowed to lead, certain people are not. Certain people have to do certain things, other people do not. And so this is where the first cracks are appearing.
And there's like so many backstories and so many things of how, like, I like how you use the word fluke, and we've talked about, not just in this episode, but in other episodes, just how so many things are, done out of response, like to things that are going on. And it's always bigger and better. And look at what we're doing. And so we come off of these like big years of VBS, and there's so many factors that lead to that, like the growth in the town. And like you're talking about people looking for a non-denominational church. We happen to be, the only one, and then soon another one comes into town or whatever. But things are also being used to manipulate people behind the scenes and to guilt people into doing things. And, like I said, I went to work full time, but now that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. Right. But like, we can't manage our lives if I don't work, and we can't stay their head above water if I'm not working. And it turns out that, I actually was pursuing a career in the restaurant business, and it turns out that's, what I do. So I can land this really amazing job, this high paying job, and be this successful, career person. And that on one level is okay because that's how we're going to survive. But on the other hand, it's not okay because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing as far as a woman in the church culture. And so that's used against me. And then we have this dip, which really ultimately isn't my fault, but I'm being told, because I went and got a job, because I'm not all in, that now all of a sudden, look at our numbers are down and I'm buying it. I'm like, oh my gosh, and so I want to be at home and not working. And so I'm constantly conflicted. I want to do theater. I love theater. And so, there's this total manipulation of my allegiance to the church, my allegiance to the ministry. And so that sets us up prime to do something super huge. But also something else happens this year. I've told you before, I participated in community theater, and a few of the people from the community theater group want to do something with all of the churches because our whole community is booming. Like you talk about the other churches doing VBS, like our whole community at this time, as far as it goes with churches, we're not the only ones booming. It's not that everybody who moved to this area is looking for a non-denominational church. We just experienced the growth from those who were. But guess what? Every other church experienced growth from the people moving who were looking for their brand of church. And so there's like this huge boom in our faith community. And so some people get together, and I'm one of them, and we're going to do this interfaith choir. And I'm leading on the initial board of this interfaith choir, and I'm excited. It's going to be great. And I bring it to the church, to the worship team, like, hey, anybody who wants to participate, we're doing this interfaith choir. It's going to be great. Because we've done choirs. That was a big thing too with the Christmas Eve services, is this would be a time that there would be a choir. So everybody who wanted to be on the worship team but wasn't good enough qualified or wasn't allowed to be on the worship team. I forgot about this. Yeah, Christmas Eve was your chance to be a part of the worship team. You could be in the choir. And so this interfaith choir, Amanda, some of this behind the scenes, because I brought it and I was kind of told yeah, that sounds great. And then I didn't know really what happened to it, but I participated in it and Froggy participated in it.
So I had no idea you were leading it. I had no idea that you were a big part of it. No freaking clue. How it gets brought to me is the woman who is in charge of, she's our representative for the Chamber of Commerce in our town. She goes to Tom about it. At this point, any event, anything that Tom doesn't want to deal with, that he doesn't want to take the attention away from the ladies in the office to deal with, he tells them to call me. Because I am the emotional support person for all ministries, all events. I am that person. And so he doesn't want to deal with it. He tells her to call me. I get excited about it because I think it's this amazing thing. So he passes it off to me because he doesn't want to be the one to tell her no. I call Tom and I present it as it's this great, wonderful thing. So now knowing that you were a part of it, first, Tom doesn't want you to do anything where you are going to potentially outshine Froggy. Tom doesn't want you to do anything that is going to potentially take you away from doing things at Come As You Are and outside of the church. Tom doesn't want to have you do anything that is going to build your confidence in any way because you should be the lowly wife staying at home for Froggy. And Tom hates anything that was not his idea. Flat out, period, end of story. Anything that was not his, he found it, it was his brainchild. Anything like that, he hates it. He's going to immediately shut it down. And so Tom...
And he's not working with these other churches. Let's be real.
He yells at me. It is called interfaith. And he's yelling scripture at me about like how there's one true church and there's going to be a bunch of false leaders and like basically any verse that you could think of in scripture about people leading people astray and calling your faith real without it being real faith and all of these things. And like he screams all of that at me. And so then I have to call this lady. And so I try to call the chamber lady and she's like, oh, well, I'm just the middle person. You got to call the woman in charge. So I call the person, Melissa, that you are partnering with, that you are co-leading with. I have to call her. And in a very polite, yet Tom made it very clear, I had to make it clear to them that we are not participating and Come As You Are will never participate in any of these things. Period, end of story. Take us off your list. Have a great day. Like, I had to communicate that. So,
and I had
to
go
know
take all the flyers down.
Yep. Yep.
I put up all those flyers, and you want to know what's even funnier about that? Is Tom said he didn't know anything about it.
I had to go take them down. The only flyer that was allowed up was the one hanging on the front desk at the office.
Yeah, because he said I was allowed. He gave me permission to hang up the flyers. And then he was like, later on, you know, like, he was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, I didn't know anything about that really. Like, the kind of like, yeah, I didn't quite understand what that was kind of a way. And then Froggy was allowed to, he sang in the choir. They didn't participate or show up or anything. And then it was almost like he was doing it to, like, it was a gift to me. Froggy participated as a gift to me. And then he afterwards was just very much like, yeah, see, like, they tried to convert me. Shut up. No, they didn't.
We are the only ones. We do not need to do anything with any of the other churches. We are the only path.
But this sets us up for what happens next year. So my going to work full time and not being all in and trying to, you know, give them my spare time. That's not good enough, like, to serve with my spare time on a Christmas Eve service. Then this community interfaith choir that I want to participate in and I think is like so cool and I'm loving it, leads us to, we're going to do a full-pledged in a theater Christmas production, but not for Christmas Eve service. We're going to do this production and then invite everybody to Christmas Eve service.
Yeah. Which we'll get to that story because that's an episode all in itself.
It's an episode all on its own. But
to end this episode, I do want to talk about this idea of giving around Christmas too, because we've talked about this, like, we are the only ones who are doing Christmas correctly, and we are the ones to save our community. And so we've had, like, you know, hey, if you can't pay for your kids' Christmas, give us a call. We'll help you out. It's been very low key. But when we get all of these people coming after the flood, we have the big giveaway. We have all of these things. So we have, and we create this mentality that we are in this needy, impoverished area, and our our church is the only ones who are filled with like people who are doing it right, because we're following God. So our finances are good and everyone else is struggling financially. And so we start having this thing and they call it Kingdom Christmas. And essentially it starts the year after we build the building, and we start offering this to the community. You need help paying for Christmas? Come As You Are is the place to come. And it builds and builds and builds slowly to the point where in 2014, we have Kingdom Christmas. And they get a bunch of donations. People are buying toys and presents and all of this stuff, and it's all unwrapped. And they set it up in the gym, and it's like the premise of like people can come in and basically like you come shop for Christmas for free, but we're going to pair you up with someone and they're going to follow you around. And while they're asking you questions about your kid and what kind of presents they might like, we're also shoving the gospel down your throat because we're going to save your whole family's soul while paying for Christmas. Right. And so the way that Tom wanted it ran and the way that the lady running it wanted it ran did not mesh. And so it caused this big, huge division, this big explosion, and a lot of people ended up leaving the church over Kingdom Christmas. And so the next year, we have to do something different. We still want to give people stuff. And so because I am now a part of the care ministry, we have to do the giving tree. And that is like the extent of my Christmas participation. So essentially it's like, you know, you go to like Walmart and there's like the ornaments on the tree and you take one off and you shop for that kid.
Like an angel tree.
Like an angel tree. Yeah. It's the same thing, only we are not calling it the angel tree because we're not angels. We are here to love people and show them the love of Christ. So it is a tree with a bunch of hearts on it. So it looks like a Valentine's tree. And you shop for these kids. But same thing.
We can't organize ahead of time. We have to do this all right after Thanksgiving.
Yep. It's all right after Thanksgiving. And it's all, we are taking, so there are people who come to Christmas Eve service in 2015 and say, I don't have presents for my kids for tomorrow. And I am getting phone calls in 2015 in Wyoming saying, what do we do? And I have to say, someone's going to have to go shopping for these kids. So there is someone going out on Christmas Eve to Walmart to shop for someone who just randomly shows up at our Christmas Eve service. And that became the norm. We were buying stuff for people on Christmas Eve for years.
Like the whole, like, just the level of like lack of boundaries for members of the church, right? Like this expectation of like, you're going to serve until you're so depleted and burn out, but you can't be depleted and burn out because then that must mean you don't have Jesus, right? And like just the guilt, and then the level of the expectation of things that we must do for these holidays, and then to be like giving, and this constant like just cycle of I don't even know like the word to put it, but none of it is healthy. Like if you compare this to a dysfunctional family with like just an alcoholism or like codependency, I don't even want to say alcoholism. If you take this and you compare this to like the dysfunction in families of like the codependency, like side by side, these things are like identical. And you have an environment of, and I hate to say dysfunctional, but I mean like that is the like, this is a codependent relationship, and you have all of these people in this codependent relationship, but it's a church, and none of it is healthy. But
Well, we never say no. And also, so I was always happy at this time that I didn't have to help with the giving tree, because now there's a lot of presents to wrap. We are never saying no until the last minute. So there's women wrapping, and we can't wrap until like right until the last minute, because we have to even out everything. We have to make sure everything's even. It's a huge production to get this giving tree presents out the door. And then someone has to share the gospel with them. And it has to be someone highly trained to do that.
Trained by Tom.
Right.
Well, and we're almost
women
like
have to have childcare.
Do you hear what you just said though? Like we won't say no. Like this on the surface, like here we are, we're these people, and we always say yes, and we're like these great people who give, but we're only going to give to you if you sit and listen to my 15-minute spiel of 5 easy ways to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and I'm killing my people to give it to you.
Well, because Tom wants to say no. Tom doesn't want to do any of this. He thinks all of this is stupid. Behind the scenes, he's telling me, if someone's waiting until Christmas Eve to tell you that they don't have money for presents, why are they waiting so long? What's wrong with them? Like, he does not agree with any of this, but he's not going to be the one to say no. So that Christmas of 2015, someone brought it to Tom or Charlotte and said, this is the problem. They don't want to be the ones to say no. They call me. They say, call Amanda, because Amanda will be the bad guy. Amanda will say no. The problem is Amanda has drank so much Kool-Aid. Amanda knows she can't say no, because I was damned if I do, damned if I don't. If I say no, I get called in because why am I not loving the community? What was wrong with me? Why would I not want to give someone Christmas? Do I not have the heart of Jesus and all of this stuff? But if I say yes, then all of a sudden, Tom never came out and was like, why are you doing this? But I could tell the whole thing annoyed the crap out of him.
Yeah.
Because it's pressure all the way around.
Like, he'd want to say no, but then he'd get mad at you if you said no. Like, because
Right.
it's all about looks and appearance.
We can't have any boundaries. And when we finally do put up some boundaries to make ministries run smoothly and make people not have to kill themselves, we are excommunicated almost. Let's be real, what happened, but we have to sit there for a public humiliation. But this is the other thing is, if you are serving and you have a child and you show up at the church office with your 3-year-old to wrap presents and you have no idea what this entails and how long you're going to be there, because it is a huge undertaking. And then at the last minute, we may add on that we're going to give out cookies. So then you have another whole group of people that need to package cookies. So the office is going to tell you that they're going to call me to come get your 3-year-old, or you have the choice to come bring the 3-year-old to me. And you go along with this. And then I come with, I'll have Ryder and Jolynn in the front seat of my Tahoe and Joey unseatbelted, crammed
All
in the
three.
front seat.
Yep, all three in the front seat.
Johnny and Clayton and Joey in the back cargo area, me telling them to lay down, don't let anyone see you, so that I have car seats open to go collect children from the pantry that don't know me to go to my house. And I can't let the kids out of my car. I'm like laying there. Do not, if I see your head, you're taking a nap when you get home. Ryder, just sit there and don't move, you know. And I have Joey and Jolene screaming at each other. He's hit me, you know what I mean? It's just the insanity.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
Insanity.
Jesus
Merry
is the
Christmas.
reason for the season.
Yes. But I was happy not to wrap a present.
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.